Welcome to hashtag 52 Boundaries. And this week we are talking about Zoom boundaries, the online Zoom ones, not the camera ones. And I'm so delighted to have with me the wonderful Jason Walmsley, who is the founder of BConnectedWorld and who has tons of experience with Zoom meetings because that's pretty much his life. So we have had a chat about what is really important in Zoom meetings. And so I'm here to hear all about your experiences and about how all of these fit into the model that I've been using, Nina Brown's soft, rigid, spongy, and flexible boundaries. Now, they may not always fit under one heading, but that's not the point. This whole conversation is designed to give you an idea of what to be mindful of when you go on a Zoom meeting, because we often don't even think about it. We just go in and just take our cultural boundaries, watch another one for that one, another chat, and just plonk them into that as a host and as a participant. So welcome, Jason. It's wonderful.
Hi, Angela. It's great to be here.
Okay, let's go. So we have talked about what stuff people do when they go on Zoom.
I think that the first thing that people forget, so I live in that Zoom environment, and I have. I would do 15 to 20 Zoom calls a week. Minimum. Some of them are one-on-one calls like what we're doing here. Some of them will be networking events. Some of them 20, 30, 40 people. Some of them I run. Some of them I'm just involved in. And I think COVID has got us to that point. And it's sort of, I feel with a lot of people, it's disassociated them from what's actually going on in real life. You're sitting here behind a screen, and we have become, the only word I can think of is voyeuristic, because we're sitting on a chair and we're watching 10, 15, 20 people in the room thinking that they can't see us. And I think what that does is it creates a sense of relaxation to the point that people forget, I wouldn't say the rules of society, but they forget other people's boundaries. And I've been in a lot of Zoom rooms where people just let it go. And I've always turned around with the guys that run all my networking groups is, look, you should always have a format. There has to be a meeting format. It doesn't have to be scripted. You've got people that do. You've got those rigid boundaries. This is it, this is it, this is it. To me, I don't particularly like those, and a lot of people don't. But if they're work-related, then that is what you would expect to be. But yeah, I think people forget that you're still interacting, even though you're not with somebody. They can still see everything that's going on.
The worst thing I find is when people get so transactional that they turn the camera off. And here's another boundary: coughing with the microphone off. I actually have to say, if it's just a cough like that, I no longer turn the microphone off, because I say, if we were in real life in front of each other, I couldn't turn the microphone off either. But if it's a massive coughing fit, I will do that, because especially if there are other people in the meeting.
Oh, look, mine's just habit, because we've got the radio station, so I do a lot of the interviews. And as a 50-odd-year-old overweight asthmatic smoker who gets bronchitis every time the weather changes, I tend to cough quite a lot. So it's just, or they're not big, again, but no, it's not that. It's just those little clear the throat ones. But I find I do them quite often, especially when I'm talking. And I don't think everybody in the room wants to hear it. If it's being recorded, to me, it's actually got to be turned off. So, sure. But you're right about the camera. Nothing worse than going into a room, like I said, 10, 15, 20 people, and half of them do not have their camera on. Are they even there?
Yeah, and it happens.
Yeah,
you call somebody and you say, so-and-so, what would you like to say about that? And there's no response whatsoever.
Yeah, you've got to be present. You've got to be in the room. I always look at a Zoom meeting, whether it's networking, whether it's a one-on-one, it is a work meeting for me. I run a networking organization. And if I was in the room with those people, I should not be acting any differently. I should also not be dressing any differently. Yeah, there's nothing worse than you're on a Zoom call and you've dressed up. Look, I'll go a little bit deeper on the dressing. So I've run my own businesses for a long period of time. I've run them from home most of the time. I'm even going back 20 years when we had dial-up internet, right? And I used to run online businesses from home. But what I would do is I would still get dressed. I will get dressed for work. I might not put a tie on, but I'd definitely put a business shirt on. A lot of the time, I'd go out and drive to McDonald's and get myself a coffee and then come back. And that's when I start work. And look, I'm probably guilty over the last few months. I've gone a little bit lax and I've run some of my networking events in hoodies. And it's actually funny. Yesterday, somebody said something to me. And I went, okay, yeah. I'm getting a bit lax. I'm not being as professional, because when you dress up for the occasion, you act at the occasion. You wouldn't turn up to a boardroom meeting wearing your slippers, your tracky dacks and a hoodie. You wouldn't be allowed to do that. Now, on Zoom, you've still got the advantage that you can still wear your slippers, all right? You can wear your tracky dacks, but at least put a professional top on. Shave. Yeah, for men, I mean, you know, it's a given. You know, if I go into a room and I look at somebody that's slouching in their chair, messing around on their phone, not taking any notice, unshaved, dirty t-shirt, eating, we'll cover eating a bit later. Oh, that frustrates the hell out of me.
Well, you might as well go there now.
Yeah, look, I mean, I understand everybody's got different eating times. People have eating regimes. I don't mind personally being in a room and watching somebody eat a snack bar. You know, I can understand if you're trying to eat every 3 hours and you've been back-to-back meetings, that's fine. But I once actually went to a meeting where somebody was sat there literally eating steak and chips with a knife and fork in a Zoom meeting. And
you see the plate?
Yeah, you could hear the scratching of the knife, and it was just like, you've got to be kidding me. You know, like, so if you can't hold it in your hand, you shouldn't. I've eaten chicken nuggets at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, but it's in your hand.
It depends on the purpose of the meeting, I would say. I mean, if I have a meeting with a client, I would never dare to eat.
No,
I might drink, you know, but I wouldn't eat. Sometimes we have dinner catch-ups with the organizations that I'm with, and we will have something to eat, but it's specifically a social catch-up.
Yes.
But I wouldn't go into a business meeting at work and start eating there.
No, you wouldn't.
Depends on the culture, but it's the agreements. I think that's what really matters. It's about setting up guidelines.
Yeah.
Please feel free to eat a snack. Avoid eating steak and chips.
So I nearly fell off my chair, although you've got to be kidding. And you know, that's one of those occasions that you sort of wish they did turn the camera off, which is another bugbear of mine. As you say, you know, 20 people in the room and a half and don't got the camera on, you don't know what's going on. There are circumstances you would turn your camera off. If you're sitting at your kitchen table and something's going on behind you, you don't want everybody to see. We've all seen the TV ads where, you know, the half-naked person walks behind. You turn your camera off, or at least you blur your background. I think what a lot of people don't do is they don't understand what they can actually do with Zoom. Yeah, they don't realise that you can actually blur your background. We don't want to see what's going on in your kitchen while your kids are sitting there having the dinner. We don't want to see that sort of stuff. We don't want to. One of the things we don't want to see is see your cat walking across your desk. We
that happens a lot.
It does. I've seen a lot of cat bumps.
Oh yeah.
In my time, and I'm just like, really, come on, this is supposed to be a work event. So, but you can blur your background, and you can put backgrounds up like I've got. There's nothing worse than seeing somebody's dirty bedroom, a dirty spare room, because people are too busy looking at what's that in the background? You know, I just think people don't think anymore, and I really do believe it's come down to that fact that we have adapted to Zoom so much over the last 2-3 years because of lockdowns and everything like that, that, as I said, people have just forgotten that this is actually a meeting.
Yeah. What I find really hard is when people have a Zoom meeting on an iPhone and then they start walking around. and take me with them wherever they go. And I literally get seasick because there's all this wobbling going on and the screen is moving around. And it's really hard to focus on the meeting at all.
Yeah.
And what the person is saying, because I'm just too busy being nauseous.
Yeah, no, look, I agree completely. You know, you should be prepared for your meetings, and it's just about treating everybody with respect.
Yeah,
and it's about reading the room. Yeah, and I think people have forgot to do that. And I'll revert back to going into a boardroom at work. All right, you wouldn't go into a boardroom at work and start interrupting everybody when they tried to talk. You wouldn't try and talk over the top of somebody in a boardroom. You'd get sacked, right? But on Zoom, it's something that seems to happen because people don't realize they've disassociated. They're playing that voyeuristic role. And you see it on Zoom all the time where somebody will make a wisecrack. Then 5 or 6 people will try and keep that joke going. It's like, that's not what we're here for. You know, respect everybody else's time. And that's one of the things we do at BConnectedWorld. We read what we call the preamble at the beginning. And one of the stipulations in there is respect everybody's time. If you have a question that's a one-on-one for me or one of my staff, do it in a one-on-one environment. Don't waste. Everybody else is investing their time and their money to be part of this group. They don't want to hear the little issues that we've got at the back end somewhere. They don't want to hear that sort of stuff. So, you know, read the room and just show common courtesy. Yeah.
What I find really interesting is also, I mean, we're differentiating between, on one hand, hosting a Zoom meeting, and on the other hand, participating in a Zoom meeting. So as a host, when somebody ignores the comments, like people sometimes make valid comments about what's going on depending on the size of the group. And then it can be really useful to go in and address those questions, because raising the hand may interrupt the flow, whatever it might be. But I find it equally difficult when somebody, and I think there's a mix up between Zoom and Facebook Lives. You know, when you go to a Facebook Live and people have a running commentary on the side going, good point, great exercise, or really resonate with you, or no, I totally disagree. And you've got that in your Zoom chat while you're trying to run a meeting. It can get very, very, because people are constantly looking at the chat, and they really don't focus on the meeting anymore.
Look, to me, the chat room in Zoom is for information. What's your information there? This is what I do. This is how I help people. This is how you can find me. It's not for conversations.
Depending on the purpose of the meeting. I mean, if you're in a business meeting and you're saying, I mean, I sometimes have that with clients, here's a resource. Let's have a look at that. I've just sent you a link, and then we can have a look at that together, but you've got that then. Yeah. I think that's okay, but you need to agree on what you share.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, people just having conversations, it's just like really everybody else is trying to do. And look, there are other networking groups out there. A lady called Misty Henkel runs quite a good one. And she actually sends everybody the chat, but she's getting to the point now that I don't think she wants to anymore, is she's got to filter out all this list of stuff where people have made silly comments and stuff like that. But I want to go back to something you said about raising your hand, right? And this is just common etiquette. And it's something that's available on Zoom. If you go down to the bottom of the screen, there's a thing that says reactions, and you can raise your virtual hand. Yeah. Now, if you're waving your hand, your actual physical hand, and trying to shout and scream, you're disrupting the flow of the meeting. And it might be at a part where the host really wants to try and get something across. If you raise your virtual hand, what actually happens is you then go to the top right-hand corner of the screen of the host, and they can see that you've got your virtual hand raised. What that allows them to do is, when they get to the point that I can now find out what your question is, they can ask that question. What it also does is it puts them in order. So if 3 people raise their hand, it will go in the order of who put their hand up first. If you've got people just shouting and screaming and, hey, I'm waving my physical hands, you don't know who was what, people get lost. And yeah, it's just about setting those boundaries at the beginning, that if you have a question, raise your virtual hand, and when we have a chance, we will get to it.
Yep.
And it's also about, as somebody who's in that room, not the host, as a visitor. obeying those, well, not obeying, but following those guidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've kicked people out of BConnectedWorld because they just can't follow simple guidelines. They'll come in and they'll have a whinge, and it's like, this is supposed to be a positive thing, and they're whinging about something that's got absolutely nothing to do with anybody in the room.
Yeah. Again, another boundary that I find really important is the respect for time. When you know that you've got 2 minutes to talk. I mean, I in a face-to-face conversation, again, it's all depending on the context. But you wouldn't talk for 5 minutes. You would, as you said, you would read the room and you would give the other people the opportunity to say something as well. But sometimes I find that people are almost like, you open the faucet and they just gush out and they talk for 5 minutes nonstop, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's when people turn off, and you can literally see them turn to the other screen and they lose the conversation.
But a lot of it, to me, it's about being prepared. Okay. I go back to that boardroom. And if the boss has called all the workers into the boardroom and says, you're going to deliver this, you're going to deliver this, you would do it, and you would do it in the time frame that you are told. If I look at online networking, it happens a little bit in face-to-face, but it tends to happen more in online. You'll be given 60 seconds to say who you are, what you do, who you help, and how people can get hold of you. And there are some people who can do it in 30 seconds. Now, to me, you've been given a minute. Use your opportunity, right? Keep it going. Don't stop after 30 seconds. But people then come in and, anybody, and I just think you have not prepared for this. And not only is it sort of disrespecting the people in the room because you haven't even done your own homework, it's not going to work for you. People switch off. As soon as you start umming and ahhing, people actually go, I've got no idea what they're talking about. And they switch off. And that's when you see these things start coming out. Yeah. And this, put it away. Put it, don't have it anywhere. I mean, look, the only person that should, to me, now for people, because this is obviously audio, right? So we're talking mobile phones, guys, all right? Put them away, stick them in a drawer. Unless you have a child that might be in an emergency, there is no need to pick this up. The only person that should have a mobile phone on their desk during a Zoom meeting is the host. In case somebody cannot get in and you can react to it. But there's nothing worse when you're watching 20 people on the screen and 20 of them are doing this head down and you can see what they're doing. Yeah. So, just frustrates me sometimes. You're getting me riled up. I normally let it water off a duck's back, but I'm like, no, geez, God, there's some idiots out there. But it's just about learning. Yeah.
Look, all of this it's like I just did, it was a couple of weeks ago, I had a conversation with somebody about culture. And what we have is this culture is like an iceberg. Right, you see 10% above the surface and 90% are below the surface. Yep. And Zoom has created its own culture without us ever discussing how this works. You know, like the whole multitasking thing, that it's okay to have a second screen and working on that while you're listening to, people, you wouldn't do that in a face-to-face meeting, but supposedly on Zoom, it's okay. I recently talked with somebody who said, I ran a meeting. I was participating in 2 meetings at the same time last week. I was like, how can you possibly manage your attention? There's no way you can actually be a valuable participant and get anything out of the meetings, because we know split attention doesn't work.
Yeah.
But there are all these things that are never discussed, and we don't even hold people accountable. We don't even say, hey, you show up 10 minutes late. Sorry, you're not getting in. And that's when people don't have boundaries. They run over time. They let people in at any time. They're not prepared. They don't know the functions of Zoom. Oh, how do I do this? Where's the button for? How do I share this? I
go back 25 years, and I remember I was working for a company called Pink Pages. It was like it was the local equivalent of Yellow Pages in Sydney. And I'd started working for them, and I'd only been there for about 2 weeks, and there was a Monday morning sales meeting, and I'd had a problem with the kids. And so I was late. And I walked into the sales meeting, and the sales manager turned around and went, "Get out. You can't turn up on time. You don't come in at all."
Mm.
And I felt so bad that from that day, I'm now one of these people. I'm always early. It's a standing joke throughout my family, throughout my work life. If you say 9 o'clock, Jason's there at 8:30. And it was so embarrassing.
German heritage there somewhere in
No,
there?
it was a pom, actually. It was actually a pom. I think it was just because I was the new kid. But, it goes on from there. Now, I appreciate Zoom sometimes can take 4 or 5 minutes to kick in. So one of the things we did at BConnectedWorld, we used to be a little bit lax, a little bit lazy. Yeah, not a problem. But what we realised is the damage that's actually caused to the group as a whole when people start turning up late. Because in a networking environment, if you've got 20 people in that room and 10 people have done their 60 seconds and said this is, they've done their sales manager minute, whatever you want to call it, okay? And then somebody comes in late, they get a chance to say their 60 seconds, but they haven't heard anybody else's. Yeah. Well, it's a little bit rude. So what we actually started to do, because we have, you've been to our meetings, because we appreciate people take time coming in, the first 15 minutes is sort of open networking off in breakout rooms. So now we actually have the rule that, look, on a Thursday, be in 5:45-ish, and then we'll pop you off into breakout rooms because we're going to bring you out of those bang on 6 o'clock, and we're going to start doing the 60 seconds. We start doing the 60 seconds about 6:02. Once the first person opens their mouth on a 60 seconds, nobody else gets in that room. Don't care who you are. Yeah, I've even had co-hosts turn up late. Sorry, mate, can't let you in. I'll run the bloody thing on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
it's rigid boundary then. But sometimes you have to have rigid boundaries.
You do.
They're not always bad.
You do. But that's as a host, you know what I mean? It's something you do actually need to do. Yeah. And you mentioned before, co-host, you've got to have somebody. If you're running a meeting, you need somebody to help you. And that's, the way that we've always done it. So we'll always have myself and at least one co-host. Yeah. Or as an example, it's Tuesday today. So Alan's running the meeting. I'll be Alan's co-host today. So Alan runs and I press all the buttons in the background. Okay. So, somebody's coming. Great. And Alan will then read who that person is, who's in what breakout room, pop them in the right breakout room. So we know we've got a conversation going. You don't want to have 3 people in a breakout room that are the people that always try and talk over the top of each other. Because they won't come back out of the breakout room. They'll leave. Yeah. So it's you can't run the whole thing on your own. You need somebody to press those buttons and make sure everything's working all right, and press the record button and all that sort of stuff. So
no, that's nice. The one thing that I've learned is it's really important to also schedule time. I mean, when you since you mentioned breakout rooms, I have been in sessions where people would be put into breakout rooms and the host posed a very complex question, like discuss, and there are 6 people in the breakout room and we've got 5 minutes to discuss it. And these are people who have never met each other and we haven't built any trust.
Yeah.
We don't know who we are, but we're supposed to discuss a very complex topic in 5 minutes. And then after 5 minutes, we're out and maybe 2 people have talked.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I don't think it's just that. I think it pushes people too far outside the comfort zone. Yeah. And like you say, you've got 5-10 minutes in that breakout room until you go back. There's networking groups. There's one called the Happy Neighborhood Project. And one of the things they do that I absolutely hate, I'm not putting them down. It's the way that, different networking groups work for different people. But I went in there and they put you in one-on-one breakout rooms. And to me, that's what if you get somebody that can't, we all know people that just are not conversationalists. And the funniest thing for me, I'm a straight up and down sort of bloke, right? And I got put in there with somebody who claimed that she could talk to dead animals. And to me, I'm like, yeah, okay, not my scene, but I'll be nice. And I asked the questions and whatever. And then they took us out the breakout room. And then they said, okay, we'll pop you all into other breakout rooms again now, one-on-one. They put me back in the same room.
Yeah, that's different.
I can't do this. I just went, sorry, I've got to go. I just couldn't do it. And that's why, in our breakout rooms, there's always 3 or 4 people. There might be one person that doesn't get involved in the conversation, but there's nothing worse than being stuck in a breakout room with somebody you really don't get on with or understand, or somebody that doesn't communicate. There's a lot of people turn up to networking events or meetings that don't give any input. They don't talk.
Yeah.
And when you're the one doing all the talking, just because you don't want to look at each other, it's just, there's a lot of hosts out there need to work out what they're doing as well.
For me, it depends on the purpose. I have gone to self-development online workshops where we were put into one-on-one workshops, and it was about discussing a topic. But that was not because we didn't know each other. We knew each other, and it was about, let's share a private perspective here on things, and it wouldn't be taken back into the room. And that was actually quite good if we didn't want to. It's about discussing it.
Yes.
About saying, how are we running this? And it's like, I've talked with Alan about this, with Alan Stevens. I've talked with Scott Carson about this. I've talked with so many people about it. Create guidelines around sharing, around listening, around communicating. And Zoom is a communication tool. So if we don't set up the guidelines for how we want to talk and how we want to act, how we want to dress, I wouldn't go into a meeting with pajamas. We've talked about that. There are all of these things that we all assume are in place, and then people take advantage of them or ignore them or bust out of the boundaries. There are all sorts of things that come up that people never address. Like when I talk to people, sometimes what I find really challenging, and I say this, is some computers have the camera in such a way that when people look into the screen, they're actually looking like this. Yes. So they're actually not making eye contact with the screen, or they have the camera on one screen and they're looking into the other screen. And often people don't even address that. Like if I'm in a face-to-face conversation and somebody talks to me, like looking out of the window the whole time, or looking, just not engaging with me, I would definitely mention that and say, not in those words, but hello, I'm here.
Yeah.
So I think it's a kindness to set up your environment in such a way that you can build the best possible rapport with the person that you're talking with, whether it's 1 or 20.
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, I've said this before, and I'll reiterate it. I think what you need to do, whether you're a host or whether you're a visitor, whether it's a one-on-one or whether it's a group environment, would you act that way in the boardroom? And if the answer is no, it doesn't cut it in a Zoom meeting either.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like we've reached a point where we can say we've addressed a lot of points.
Yeah.
There are quite a few that we could still address, but it's a good.
I could go for hours, but we'll not. Because we said this was half an hour.
Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe you could write a book about that. I think that would be a much needed one.
Funny you should say that. We're in the process of doing that.
Wonderful. That'll be great. Let me know. I'll definitely promote that.
Beautiful. No worries.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's been absolutely delightful to talk with you. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. There's the YouTube channel, and there will be Spotify at some point soon. Thank you.